The room went silent before the judge even looked up. A courthouse janitor in gray gloves stood just inside the rail, rain still darkening the shoulders of his uniform, holding a black bank pouch in both hands like it might explode. At the defense table, Preston Vale stopped whispering to his lawyer. His face changed first, then everyone else's did. "Your Honor," the bailiff said, taking the pouch from him, "Mr. Morales found this behind the juror elevator at 8:12 this morning." Judge Helena Ward leaned forward. "Has anyone claimed it?" No one answered. The zipper opened. Inside were neatly banded stacks of $100 bills, 24,000 in cash, then a prepaid phone, then a folded note in block letters, Juror 8, blue notebook, after lunch. For a second, nobody moved. You could hear the air system pushing through the vents above Courtroom 4B and the soft tremor of someone in the gallery trying not to gasp. Preston Vale's attorney reached for the legal pad in front of her, but even she knew the trial she had been trying to control for 9 days had just slipped out of her hands. What looked like a lost bag of money was not lost at all. It was a map. And once that map was opened in public, the case stopped being about one reckless man in one expensive SUV. It became a story about what powerful people do after they think money can outpace truth. By then, Vale was already in deep trouble. 44 years old, founder of Vale Fleet Services, owner of a mansion in New Albany, and a reputation for acting like rules were for employees and invoices, not for him. He was on trial for aggravated vehicular homicide after prosecutors said he drove his black 2023 Escalade through a rain-slick crosswalk on East Broad Street at 10:36 p.m. on October 19, 2024, and killed 17-year-old Nia Carson on impact. She had just left a school fundraiser, honor roll student, debate team, part-time cashier at a grocery store on weekends. Her mother still had the voicemail Nia left at 10:11 saying she was on her way home. Vale's defense was simple, cold, and expensive. He wasn't driving. His security assistant was. That assistant, Marcus Wynn, gave police a statement taking responsibility within hours of the crash. But the statement didn't fit the vehicle data. Seat positioning, Bluetooth pairing records, toll camera timing, and a traffic light feed 2 blocks west all pointed back to Vale. So did the panic and the cleanup that followed. His phone went dark for 39 minutes after the collision. His SUV was detailed before sunrise. A body shop in Dublin billed an unnamed cash client to replace the lower grille and fog lamp assembly the next day. That should have been enough to bury him. It wasn't, because men like Preston Vale don't just buy lawyers. They buy delay, confusion, silence, and distance. And for a while, it worked. Henry Morales knew nothing about any of that when he started his shift at 6Q that morning. He was 59, worked custodial services in the Franklin County Courthouse for 11 years, and moved through the building the way disciplined people do, quietly, on time, and without leaving problems behind them. His wife had survived a stroke the year before. His daughter was finishing nursing school. He cleaned judges' chambers, stairwells, the juror corridor, whatever was assigned. At 8:12, as he moved a yellow caution sign near the side radiator by the juror elevator, he spotted the black pouch wedged behind the baseboard piping. He didn't unzip it, didn't pocket it, didn't call a friend. He carried it straight to the bailiff's station and logged where he found it. That simple decision ended up doing what weeks of arguments had not. It forced the room to confront what was hiding in plain sight. Vale's attorney, Allison Pike, recovered fast. She stood and said exactly what defense counsel says when reality turns hostile. There was no proof the pouch belonged to her client, no proof it had anything to do with the case, and no proof the note was authentic. She used the word plant within 30 seconds. She suggested contamination. She suggested theater. She suggested maybe the court should clear the gallery and address the issue quietly. Judge Ward did the opposite. She locked the room down. Jurors were escorted to a secure conference area. Court security pulled hallway footage. Every person on Vale's access list was ordered to remain in the building. Phones stayed on the tables. No one left. Not the lawyers, not the consultants, not the relatives sitting in the second row pretending they had wandered into a tragedy by accident. Then the cameras started telling the story. At 7:41 a.m., Shane Mercer, Vale's private security contractor and former sheriff's deputy, badged through a side corridor he had no reason to use. At 7:44, he paused near the juror elevator. At 7:46, he bent down near the radiator, partially shielded by a pillar. At 7:48, he walked away with one hand in his jacket and the other empty. 14 minutes later, Henry Morales found the pouch. That was the first collapse. The second came when prosecutors connected the cash to other things that had felt ugly, but isolated. 3 days earlier, a witness named Cameron Lee, who had told detectives he saw Vale get out from the driver's side after the crash, suddenly softened on the stand. Said maybe he had been mistaken about the angle. Said rain can do strange things to memory. 2 weeks before trial, Nia Carson's aunt reported a black pickup idling outside her apartment at midnight for nearly an hour. And one of the alternates told the jury office an unknown man in the courthouse cafe had tried to strike up a conversation about how these cases ruin everybody. Separate incidents maybe, nerves maybe. But once the pouch surfaced, separate incidents stopped looking separate. Inside the prepaid phone was no contact list the defense could laugh off, and no blank screen that would let everyone pretend the bag was just cash. Even before the full forensic extraction, the lock screen wallpaper gave it away. It was a cropped photo of the juror seating chart from Courtroom 4B. That was when the story stopped being ordinary. If you appreciate stories where power finally meets consequences, stay with me because this next part changed the entire case. Investigators got the warrant before noon. By evening, they had the burner open, Mercer's vehicle searched, and subpoenas headed to Vale Fleet's accounting department. What came back over the next 48 hours was not sloppy desperation, it was structure. There were notes in the phone drafts folder using initials instead of names. BN husband works nights. Offer coffee card first. If no interest, move to 11. There was a parking stub from the juror lot and a receipt for 3 gift cards purchased at 6:18 a.m. at a Target on Morse Road. There was also a deleted voice message fragment recovered from the device cache, just 7 seconds long but clear enough. A male voice saying, "I don't want a verdict, I want confusion." Then accounting cracked open. Vale Fleet's controller, under subpoena, and suddenly very aware of where conspiracy charges can lead, turned over an internal spreadsheet labeled Special Handling. It wasn't supposed to survive, but someone had exported it as a backup on November 2nd, 12 days after the crash, and forgotten about it in a shared folder. The entries were small enough to hide in a mid-sized company and specific enough to destroy one in court. MW statement 12,000. Vehicle cleanup 40850. CL groceries 3,000. Security outreach courthouse 24,000. Under the approval column were 2 letters repeated over and over, PV. That was the center of gravity, not the cash itself, not even the juror note. It was the pattern, a written, timed, funded pattern, proving the case had never been about panic. Panic lasts minutes. This had lasted months, and then investigators found the detail that made Vale's original defense impossible to say with a straight face. Company server logs showed that at 11:03 p.m. on the night Nia Carson was killed, an executive credential linked to Vale's office remotely disabled telematics reporting on the Escalade. The command came from an IP address inside Vale Fleet headquarters. Mercer was already on site there by then. The bodyguard's false statement was filed at 1:17 a.m. The detail invoice was paid in cash at 7:52 a.m. The cover-up had started before Nia's blood was dry on the street. By Friday, Judge Ward declared a mistrial because the jury had been targeted, but she did not give Vale the clean break he wanted. She revoked his bond in open court. Shane Mercer was arrested in the parking structure before he reached the exit gate. The county prosecutor added charges for bribery, intimidation of a juror, witness tampering, conspiracy, falsifying business records, and obstruction of justice. City officials suspended Vale Fleet's public contracts that afternoon. By Monday, his lenders were asking questions his money could no longer silence. The image the local stations kept replaying was not Vale being let out in cuffs, though that was satisfying enough. It was Henry Morales, still in his work uniform, walking past the cameras with his head down because he hadn't come to be important. He had come to do his job correctly. In a building full of credentials, titles, and polished shoes, the most honest act belonged to the lowest paid man in the room. If cases like this make you think about how thin the line is between order and chaos, let me know in the comments, because this is the part people miss. Systems do not survive because powerful people behave well. They survive because ordinary people refuse to behave badly when nobody is watching. The retrial began in January 2026 under armed security and a gag order that covered half the people Vale used to invite onto his yacht. This time, the prosecution didn't have to merely prove he was the driver. They had to prove he believed everyone around him could be purchased. And witness by witness, they did. Marcus Wynn, the bodyguard who had lied for him, flipped first. He said Vale handed him the script in a garage office and told him, "Just get us through the weekend." The controller testified next, reading from the spreadsheet line by line in the flat voice of a man who knew every number was now evidence. Cameron Lee admitted he took the money because his rent was late and said he had hated himself for it every day since. Then Henry Morales took the stand. No theatrics, no speeches. He told the jury where the pouch was, what time he found it, and what he did next. Allison Pike tried to shake him, asked whether he opened the bag, handled the note, or discussed the discovery before turning it in. Henry answered each question the same way disciplined people answer when they know truth does not need help. "No, ma'am. No, ma'am. I gave it to the bailiff." On cross, the defense tried one last insult disguised as logic. "Mr. Morales, you expect this jury to believe you found $24,000 and didn't look inside?" He looked at her for a second, then at the jury. "It wasn't mine," he said. That line landed harder than any objection, any chart, any forensic report, because it cut straight through the architecture of the whole case. Preston Vale had built his life on the assumption that if something was within reach, it was his, a witness, a police narrative, a jury, a dead girl's future. Henry Morales had found a fortune in a hallway and understood in 1 second what Vale never understood at all. It wasn't his. The jury deliberated 3 hours and 19 minutes, guilty on aggravated vehicular homicide, guilty on tampering with evidence, guilty on witness intimidation, guilty on attempted juror bribery, guilty on conspiracy, guilty on falsifying business records, guilty on obstruction. At sentencing in March, Nia Carson's mother stood at the podium with a photo of her daughter in a blue graduation gown she never got to wear. She said the hardest part was not that a rich man killed her child. It was that he spent months trying to prove her child's life was an inconvenience he could invoice away. The courtroom was silent again, but it was a different silence now, not shock, judgment. Judge Ward gave Vale 28 years. She called his conduct a sustained campaign of corruption built on the belief that wealth could reorganize reality. She sentenced Shane Mercer to 11 years in a separate hearing and referred 2 company executives for additional prosecution. Vale Fleet Services was debarred from public contracts, hit with civil penalties, and forced into a receivership that sold off assets to fund victim compensation and unpaid employee claims. The mansion went first, then the lake house, then the cars. Before adjourning, the judge did something rare. She mentioned Henry Morales by name. This court, she said, was not protected by money, status, or strategy. It was protected by a custodian who understood integrity without needing to advertise it. The smallest paycheck in this building carried the most honor. That is why this story stayed with people, not because a rich defendant fell, that happens sometimes. Not because a courtroom gasped, courtrooms do that too. It stayed because the entire machinery of a cover-up was finally broken by a man holding a mop, a key ring, and a rule so simple it embarrassed everyone who had complicated their way around it. Return what isn't yours. Tell the truth when it costs you nothing. Tell it even when it might cost you something. The morning after sentencing, Henry Morales was back in the courthouse before sunrise. Same gray uniform, same cart, same corridor by the juror elevator where the pouch had been found. The radiator had been repainted, the baseboard had been replaced. If you walked past too fast, you'd never know that one careless act of greed and one careful act of honesty had collided there and changed multiple lives. Preston Vale spent a fortune trying to bend the system around himself. Henry Morales spent less than 10 seconds deciding not to. And in the end, that was the whole case. If you believe no one is above accountability, remember this one. Sometimes justice does not arrive with a siren or a speech. Sometimes it arrives in wet work shoes, carrying the money back,